But West Indies chased 326 with 7 balls to spare in the end. At the halfway stage, I thought 325 was more than enough for England, not necessarily because of what West Indies had, but more because of how the pitch played. It was two-paced, bounce was variable. How did you see the run chase? What happened there? Obviously, Hope and Shepherd played brilliantly, but how did you see West Indies getting to 325?
Well, I didn't actually, to be honest with you. I mean, there was that horrible period of the run chase where Casey Carty at number 3 sort of came in and just, well, what did he chew up? He ended up with 16 from 39 balls, and Shai Hope was looking sort of and he actually stayed very calm, and that was something that I noticed on commentary from watching the game, was that he, instead of sort of losing his marbles and getting frustrated and trying to overhit the ball, he seemed to be completely oblivious to the fact that the guy at the other end was kind of losing them the game, which was real testament to his class and maturity. And I just thought, as you know, all the while, as long as England sort of continue to sort of hit the pitch hard and exploit that uneven bounce, and of course the spinners had a great day, didn't they? They ended up with 3 for 90 from 20 overs between Livingston and Ray and Ahmed, and the ball turned. You just thought, well, there's just no chance whatsoever. England hold their nerve and everything will be fine. And then, of course, Romario Shepherd enters the picture, and England go to a lot of slower balls. Tactically, some of the fields were not particularly good. You got Sam Curran bowling over the wicket, splaying the ball across them with no one at third man. They kept scything it over there. There was a complete sort of, it was a bit of a meltdown out in the field, to be perfectly honest, in terms of decision making, in terms of, from both the bowlers and from the captaincy. So, the huge amount of respect for Romario Shepherd, and then of course Shai Hope continued to do what he'd done all the way through, which was just completely keep his cool until it got down to the end there, where he had the chance to sort of to apply the coup de grace with the 3 sixes at the death to kill it off with plenty of balls to go. It was a brilliant innings from him. It was England for 3/4 of the game, I guess, had looked like they were going to win it and were in complete control. But as soon as a little bit of pressure went back in their direction, they folded a bit, which was disappointing.
It was a brilliant innings from Hope. It was the sort of innings that England players haven't really played in quite a long time in ODI cricket. He's got 16 ODI hundreds now, averages more than 50 in the format. For a long time, there was an accusation that he didn't score quickly enough. But actually, this year, his strike rate has been around 100, the average 50, 60. He's been a really talented player for a long time. For whatever reason, it's not clicked in Test cricket. His ODI strike rate has not been as high as it could be. What do you make of Hope as a player? Because that was a brilliant innings, and how he sort of kept West Indies in it for a long time without taking too many risks. And then when Shepherd went, when they still needed about 10 and over, he took them over the line.
Yeah, well, I mean, his numbers speak for themselves. So he joins what Kohli and Viv Richards in terms of the amount of innings it's taken him to get to 5,000 ODI runs, which means only Babar and Hashim Amla are above him in terms of the pace of getting there. And of course, he's had to do that in the midst of a sort of a drought, really, from other players in the West Indian lineup. So it's all, comparisons with the way that Lara sort of carried the West Indies at the back end of the 90s, early 2000s are completely valid. Yes, of course, West Indies have spent a bit of time playing against teams outside of the sort of top echelon, so those numbers perhaps are a little bit inflated, or not inflated, but at least the opposition that he has played against has not perhaps always been of the highest quality in comparison with the other guys on that list. But my goodness me, he's still a fine player. And don't forget, of course, he's broken English hearts before with that incredible run chase at Headingley. I can't remember what year that was
2017, I think, yeah.
So, he has it. So mentally, he's got everything there. And then I suppose it's just been a question of sort of his talent and ball striking talent sort of catching up with what is already a brilliant sort of mind for run chases and for making consistent runs in 50 over cricket. And you're right to make the comparison with England. I think we made the point at half time, myself and Alex Tudor on the radio, that England's fast starts is very much a 2020 type innings from England, wasn't it? Lots of guys getting in, making 100 run a ball and plus scores of 30s, 40s, 20s, which in T20 cricket is absolutely fine. You have no issue with that. But in the 50 over game, you need a little bit more than that from players once they get themselves in. It turns, once you get off to that fast start, it kind of turns into a test match for that batter. You have the responsibility to kind of make sure that you make the most of it. And it looked to me as though, on a positive note for England, it looked to me as though Harry Brook had really sort of taken something away from the World Cup, from watching and talking to players like Kohli, etc., about sort of, getting himself in. He was very, very watchful in the early part of his innings while still being able to tick over the strike with relative ease. And he got himself into a position where you thought, well, okay, here we go. We're going to see the full repertoire. But unfortunately, he was knocked over by Shepherd, who started off really badly, but sort of came back and picked up two really big wickets for the West Indies in the back end, just as England had decided that he was the man that they were going to go after. So, but encouraging stuff from Brook in the mould of what sort of Shai Hope was able to do. But beyond that, the rest of it, Sam Curran had a terrific day with the bat. Bryden Cast had a terrific day with the bat. England got 326 by virtue of numbers 7 and 8 kind of doing what the top order should have done. And that really ought to have been enough for them. But at the end with the ball, they were awful.
As you say, it's an odd innings to analyse because 325, good score. The way they got there, not particularly conventional. They relied on the runs from Curran and Cast at the end, and they got off to such a good start at the start. When I was watching the post-match presentation, Shai Hope credited a conversation he had with MS Dhoni as to how he's shaped his approach in ODI cricket. And Dhoni said something along the lines of, there is always more time than you think. And it struck me as like, that is one World Cup winning captain who's got one way of thinking about things in ODI cricket. England obviously have another ODI World Cup winning captain in Owen Morgan sort of hovering behind their shoulder the entire time saying England need to go harder, go harder, go harder. And it struck me that there is more than one way to go about things in 50 over cricket. And I wonder if England could benefit from an actual reset rather than essentially what this is some sort of tribute act to the 2015 to 19 squad. Because the one thing, if you look at the players they have now, in Brook, Buttler, Livingston in particular, you have three genuinely world-class death hitters, yet they very, very rarely come in anywhere near the death. I know Brook and Buttler are better than that, but you saw how South Africa negotiated 50 overs to play to the strengths of the best players they had. At the moment, if you look at England's World Cup campaign, their best performance was against Pakistan when they lost their third wicket in the 41st over. And Buttler, Brook, etc. could come in at the time of innings where they could really make a difference. And it feels like England are quite close-minded as to how to go around batting 50 overs. Because I know they got a good score here yesterday, but it wasn't in a sustainable way, I thought.
No, well, and also if Zach Crawley had been taken, it was a terrible drop by Moti off the bowling of Correa, who was impressive in the first sort of 6 or 7 overs of his spell. Crawley was put down, and Jos Buttler would have been walking to the crease in around about the 18th, 19th over, which, as you quite rightly say, is not the plan. Is not what he's down there at number 6 for. And that is by virtue of the top order playing T20 cricket, playing T20 style innings in a 50 over game. And you're absolutely right. There's nothing I can disagree with what you said there. That there is so much more time. And if the opposition, put it this way, England managed to bat out 50 overs just about by the skin of their teeth yesterday. But if you're facing 45 to 48 for the most part, no matter how many runs you'll get, and the opposition decides to take up the 50 overs to get your score, they're going to chase it down. Unless you bowl a heck of a lot better or, at the death than England have been capable of doing recently. So, you're absolutely right. That there does need to be a little bit of a rethink in terms of, well, how do we get the best out of the resources we have with the bat? I think Phil Salt is wildly talented, as is Will Jackson. The pair of them will kind of work it out between them. And, Harry Brook, in a very small sample size, seems to have kind of made some strides mentally as to how he wants to go about it as well. The Duckett-Crawley sort of partnership was an interesting one. Chances galore, a lot of risks being taken. England looking to hit boundaries out of the power play almost exclusively. Not seeming to be particularly happy to be scoring in singles is perhaps the better way to look at it. And if you're going to take as many risks as England do, um, then you are going to leave yourselves open to being knocked over. And the one thing that the legacy of Owen Morgan's team is not about what happens with England, it's how other teams are much better at scoring big totals than perhaps they used to be. And there was a really stark example of that yesterday.
On to the second innings. You said England made a few mistakes towards the end. What do you make of Buttler not turning to Will Jacks as England's sixth bowling option? Because that was a day where England could have done with the sixth bowler taking some overs off bowlers 4 and 5.
Yeah, well, look, we don't know. I don't know if there's some injury or something that prevents Will Jacks from bowling. But England have always been very happy to use more than 5 bowlers. I mean, I can't remember the last time they used 5 exclusively and didn't go elsewhere for 2 or 3. They had the absolute bonus of Liam Livingstone getting through all 10 and bowling really tidily. At times, the ball was turning very sharply for Rayan Ahmed. And it just seemed, that Sam Curran struggled with the brand new ball. He was given a role that is much more suited to, or something that he would want more than coming on after the power play, and it didn't go well for him with the new ball. And so it seemed entirely obvious. You had Hetmeyer in there as a left-hander. You could have thrown Jacks the ball for 3-4 overs, maybe skip through a few while that ball was turning, while they were still consolidating in the middle and not quite sure how they were going to get to 325, which would have left you less exposed at the back end, to having to bowl all of the overs of Carson Curran at the end. But then, having decided not to do that, and again, I don't know, long way away from there, have no idea, didn't hear anything that there was an injury or some sort of problem for Jacks that prevented him from bowling. But it just seemed so obvious that was the right thing to do. And then of course, all of the talk halfway point, and we saw it. Liam Livingstone's dismissal from Alzari Joseph, where the ball scuttled along the ground. That bowlers bowling cross seam or seam up even, but banging the ball hard into the deck, the ball would come off at 2 or 3 different heights all the way through the innings, and it happened in England's innings as well. And yet, when it got down to it, when the Shepherd onslaught began, it was pace off, slower balls, looking for Yorkers, trying to get the ball up in the slot. I always remember a conversation that used to go around the Surrey dressing room and sort of in Adam Hollyoak's time. And when you were playing on surfaces like that, he would say sort of half volley Yorker is a crime, criminal, full toss, criminal delivery to bowl on a deck where it's too paced. I don't mind if you run up and bowl back of a length and it comes off normally and a guy smashes it over mid wicket for 6. I have no problem with that. If you run up and bowl, attempt to Yorker, miss it, and it's a half volley on a deck where it's too pace and you get smoked out of the ground, I'm coming for you. It was that type of thing. Or slower ball, pace off, and it sits up and you get whacked. Not having it. You just keep smashing the pitch as hard as you can, and eventually one will roll along the deck, or the batters will be waiting for some sort of invariable bounce, and you'll get them out that way. And that didn't happen. The quicks went almost exclusively for slower balls, and even when Sam Curran went for pace on deliveries, he was bowling over the wicket to the right-handed Shepherd with 2 men up at third man. How many times did he get sided over? No third man back, or remember South Africa doing it with Marco Jansen. They'd have almost like the point would be 20 yards behind square, so you could bowl it wide, and if you did side it, it would go straight to him. Just again muddled thinking, tactical sort of naivety from that team. And it's a tough one because Sam Curran had a terrific day with the bat, showed his value down there. And I saw your piece about sort of him being a luxury item with the ball. He's a terrific cricketer, but England have got to find a way of getting another specialist bowler in the team if he plays, because he and Liam Livingstone are still at the moment, you would say, half a bowler each in the 50 over format. And so, something has to give. Either one of them has to sit it out, or England pick one less batter to get another specialist bowler in. But at the moment, it isn't quite right, because with the 5 specialist bowlers they had 4 in total, if you ask me. And that's even though Liam Livingstone had a terrific day with the ball, and to be fair to him, looked as though he was about to get going with the bat before he got a classic West Indian grubber.
Yeah, I mean, just on Curran. He opened the bowling at the start of the World Cup. That was England's plan A, with the players they had available. He opened the bowling again here. I just can't think of many bowlers in the world who've had success in ODI cricket who are his sort of bowler, sort of his height, his speed, but also what he's good at. You know, there are lots of bowlers who are brilliant T20 death bowlers who haven't been able to translate that necessarily into success in 50-over cricket. Just because I think you made this point a lot. It's very different when players are coming at you and you know the target is 9, 10 and over to when they're very happy to milk you at 5, 6, 7s. What do you think England should do there? Because it feels like Curran has actually played quite a lot of ODI cricket. I don't get what they're learning from playing Curran so soon after the World Cup. I sort of feel this is a good opportunity to get someone else in there. You know what Curran's strengths and weaknesses are. I'm not saying this is the end of him as an ODI cricketer. I'm not close to saying that, but he's a known entity when there are a lot of players around the setup at the moment who are not there yet.
Yeah, look, I think again, I think he's incredibly useful to England, but not as one of 5. I think as one of 6, he most certainly is, because of what he offers you with the bat as well, and his prowess at the death. Now he had a bad day at the death. Now that can happen to anybody. The more worrying thing was how ineffective he was with the brand new ball. And you know he's a bit down on confidence at the moment, and that's understandable after what's gone on. And England are very keen to keep him in the fray. I mean, after all, he's the second most capped player in that entire squad. So you know, you either have to make a sacrifice somewhere else, which England will be loath to do because they want to bat as deep as they possibly can, or you know you have to think to yourself, well, if we're gonna go with the policy of having five bowlers and he is one of them, then you're going to have a bit of a problem on your hands. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if England went with exactly the same team on Wednesday, and I think they probably should. You know, given what we've talked about in terms of the relative lack of experience of nearly the entire squad, Buttler aside, you've got to try and get as many games into these guys as you possibly can in this next cycle. But Sammy's got you know, for the first time in his career, he's got a little bit of pressure. He's got a bit of a target on his back, and so it'll be up to him to try and turn that around. But I would absolutely love it if you're going to be playing on surfaces like the one in Antigua. England have got to make a really big play of getting more out of Will Jacks, sharing that load around a little bit more, and try to use Sam Curran at the optimal times for him, and then for goodness sake, give him the right field for the deliveries he's trying to bowl.
Well, the first ODI was a belter. Second game is on Wednesday. Cheers for your time, Butch. Catch you next week.